All right. We're live. Welcome everybody to the eTourism Summit See Tomorrow series. We've got an extraordinary conversation planned for you today with our great partners at Miles Partnership. I want to thank you all for your longtime support of eTourism Summit and your continued engagement. It's fun to see CA especially. I think we've worked together 15, 20 years ago, I think, for the first time. Kind of scary. Really excited about this. I just wanted to give everybody a couple heads up. Today, the travel vertical went out, our weekly e-newsletter, a really cool edition. If you aren't already, I'd urge you to subscribe to the travel vertical. Tons of great new jobs, lots of movement in the travel space in the last couple weeks. So great way to catch up and see what's happening, and couldn't be more excited about some of the progress being made for eTourism Summit in September, co-located with US Travel at IPW. It's going to be an exceptional event. There's so much momentum around the eTourism Summit and some of the exciting things that are going to be coming to us new for the first time this year. So I certainly encourage everybody to please pencil in September 20th through 22nd in Las Vegas and plan to join us live and in person. So with that, CA and Kim, I want to again thank you all so much for your continued support of the eTourism Summit and everybody in the travel and tourism industry. You guys are an incredible resource, and I look forward to the conversation today.
Thanks, Will. And greetings to everyone from New Zealand, and thanks for joining us today. I'm CA Clark, the General Manager of our South Pacific office in Auckland, New Zealand, where it's a bright and early 5 a.m. on Thursday. As you can probably tell, I don't have the right Kiwi accent for this. I've been with Miles for over 20 years in the States. And I came down here to work with a team actually pre-pandemic, in part because I was really excited about the work that a lot of the DMOs were doing here in South Pacific. Little did I know what 2020 had in store for all of us. Today, we're going to talk about what everybody all around the world is talking about, which is recovery. And there's a lot of different things happening. Some of you will have noted from this part of the world, the so-called trans-Tasman travel bubble, which is quarantine-free travel between Australia and New Zealand, opened just 10 days ago. And there's what I'll call tentative optimism here regarding the tourism operators, but it's a long winter ahead to see what happens. Meanwhile, for those of you in the northern hemisphere, most of you are probably planning for a pretty hectic summer, and we'll hear about that in just a minute. Recovery, though, as the title says, is going to be more about more than just marketing. And the pandemic seems to have kicked into a higher gear, a transition that was already underway, where destinations are now asked to do many more things than just market and create appetite. We'll talk about some of what some of those things are, their education and understanding how to influence the way the destination looks, and training and upskilling and all kinds of other stuff. So today we'll explore 3 of those different aspects in more detail, and Kim will talk a little bit more about that: stewardship, readiness, and vibrancy. But first, we are honored to be joined by Narissa Oki from Martin County, Florida, and Cabinet Secretary of Tourism Jen Paul Schroyer from the state of New Mexico. Thank you both very much for joining us. And my colleague, Kim Palmer, who leads our destination optimization program. Narissa, if you wouldn't mind kicking things off for us, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about your own background, your destination, and then what opportunities and challenges you see in your marketing as we head into summer and fall.
Thank you so much for having me. So in a little bit about me, is I am been in tourism for way longer than I'd like to say. I was at the state level with the state of Georgia for 13 years. And then I moved down here to lead up the efforts for Martin County, Florida, about 6 years ago. And Martin County, we're a small destination on the southeast coast of Florida, about 2 hours from Orlando and about an hour and 45 minutes from Miami. So that's a little bit about the destination and a little bit about me. I've kind of bumped around tourism for a while and done a little bit of everything. In terms of opportunities and challenges, I would say innovating, and the need to stand out with authentic experiences is something that we're trying to make sure that we can really capture what's authentic about us. Challenges are the changing consumer sentiment, which was mentioned. I mean, consumers are up and they're down, and how do we capture them at the moment when they're going to make that decision? Because it's so different than it's been in the past. being sensitive to your residents and what they're doing. And for us, it's always balancing out the season. So we're a very seasonal destination. So balancing out the season and seeing how that's going to do, and then throwing in weather because we're in Florida. That's always an unknown. So I hope that answered it.
Thank you very much. Secretary Schroyer, same question. So a little bit about you, about your destination, and challenges and opportunities you see.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm actually really excited about this conversation because I think New Mexico and Florida are two very different destinations, and they both have handled this pandemic very differently. And so the conversation is going to be very robust. So I'm excited about that. I'm actually originally from California. My background has been both working in marketing firms and doing economic development. So I have done economic development within universities and then also for private economic development corporations. And so coming to New Mexico when I got married to a New Mexican, and this is a destination for people that have a thirst for authenticity, that really have an adventurous spirit. And that's really the New Mexico True brand. Is our tourism brand here in New Mexico, and it delivers on the promise of adventure steeped in culture. And we have an incredible experience, not only in the outdoors, but you're going to see a variety of different cultures here, and including our 22 tribal nations that we have here in New Mexico that really make it unique. We have a lot of artisans, and we have different types of architecture. So it's a very different place than the rest of the US. A lot of people think of it as traveling almost internationally, but you don't need a passport. Obviously, we're part of the United States. But even people in New Mexico or in the United States don't know that sometimes. So our brand awareness is actually low if you talk about a challenge that New Mexico has. But what we do have is, from an opportunity standpoint, is wide open spaces, beautiful landscapes, a lot of activities to enjoy, and we have a lot of arts. So that's a little bit about me and New Mexico as a destination, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll turn to Kim Palmer, who doesn't have her own destination as far as I know, but is one of the few people who has been in this business longer than me. So take it away, Kim.
Yes, actually it was my 25th anniversary at Miles this past December. My first role with the company
Congratulations.
was going around Florida, talking to DMOs about something called a website that they really needed to build for their destination. So we've come a long way from there. My current role is with our destination optimization team. Right now we're hearing a lot of talk about the marketing and the advertising side of recovery. We know there's an influx of marketing dollars coming into a lot of communities. And so we're talking about what our audiences are we targeting? How has that changed? Is it the right time to talk to international road trippers? What should we be doing? But today we're really here to talk about what happens after you have generated that awareness and interest. My team's program is called Destination Optimization, and it focuses in on that idea of what happens next. And what happens next looks a little bit like this. If you remember the Family Circus cartoons from the comic strips, Billy used to get off the bus and go all around the neighborhood before getting to his back door. Our visitors are planning travel much in the same way. There are literally hundreds of digital touch points happening from the point that your marketing and advertising have generated that awareness and interest to the actual booking and consumption of the trip. And you control a lot of those touch points, your website, your Instagram, your advertising channels. But we know that hundreds more are happening on other channels. Many of them are in Google, but also content in Wikipedia, Airbnb, Facebook, YouTube are all part of what is influencing that decision. So destination optimization is really the idea of expanding the role of DMOs to organically influence more of those touch points across travel planning platforms. And that can inform a lot of different critical decisions in your community, whether it is recovery, diversity, dispersal, etc. And we really see destination optimization falling into three primary objectives. stewardship, where we are supporting a positive perception of the destination, readiness, where we are preparing the businesses in our communities, and vibrancy, which really looks at the visual representation of our market. At the end of the day, we feel like destination optimization creates the opportunity to be kind of a action-oriented bridge between the role of destination marketing and the emerging role of destination management for DMOs. Secretary Schroyer, what are some of the ways your organization is bridging that crossover between marketing and management?
So what I really see the role of the state, specifically the tourism department, is to lead. And so we have partnered with, it's close to 50 DMOs throughout our state to launch several different programs throughout the pandemic. We really took the position of our mission needs to change here at the tourism department. We decided that probably around May of last year. We couldn't grow the economy. So we needed to prepare for recovery, and we needed to protect our tourism businesses. And so that was the lens of all the decisions we made last year. And one of the programs we launched was the Google DMO program. And we had, I believe, about 4750-ish DMOs go through it, and hundreds and thousands of businesses that claimed their listing. And really, we wanted to make sure that our digital footprint here in New Mexico was optimized. And so we did the Google DMO program. We also did a ton of creative production to make sure that New Mexico's beauty was represented in true fashion. It's absolutely gorgeous here. We also worked with our DMOs for their social channels and their websites to optimize those, actually creating a year's worth of social content for all of these destinations. We wanted to make sure that we could hit the go button as soon as we were able to do marketing once again. Some of the other things that we looked at is how do we represent our public lands? So we partnered with the U.S. Forest Service, we partnered with state parks, we partnered with other land organizations to make sure that our trails were properly marked online. So that way, the product of what you could experience in New Mexico was very attractive. And before we went down this road, my cousin works at Google, and I said, hey, I heard you guys aren't going to be doing a lot of your Google 360. And he told me, yep, we paused that program for a year. So I thought it was a perfect time for us to take that leadership role with our partners and get all of those platforms representing New Mexico as the beautiful destination that it is. And then we further looked at our marketing funnel and really started asking, what about our hotels? In New Mexico, we don't have any corporate hotels. They're all privately owned, and we have a large amount of hotels that don't have a franchise. So there are all of these quaint lodges and inns, and they don't have those turnkey marketing packages that come with the franchise. And so you could see very quickly in our marketing funnel that people couldn't book online. They couldn't see the hotels online. And so we thought that was a great opportunity to partner with private sector as well. And we did a complete audit of all of the hotels throughout the state. And now we're working with them and providing counseling to really up their game so we can be more competitive.
So from us, we're how we're trying to do that crossover between marketing and management is we're a small destination, small staff. And so we're really looking for ways that we can manage brand expectations. And you have to look at, as Kim showed earlier, consumers are going for a variety, they're going all over the place before they decide where they're going. And you really want to make sure that you're portraying yourself in a way that's accurate to the experience that they'll get when they arrive in your destination. And we also looked at during the pandemic is ways to help our small businesses navigate through the pandemic and come out of it and be stronger. So there was a lot of things that you can do that they didn't know, like, are you writing in your, any COVID restrictions, any COVID hours, any changes? Are you checking your brand reputation as a small business online? And that's hard because of a lot of our outfitters here and our product, we're small mom and pop businesses. So we worked with Miles on a series of webinars, and we had four webinars, everything from inspiring confidence in online listings to their social media presence and what that looks like, online reputation, like what do you do if you have a bad review? How do you address that properly so that, again, it's that authentic experience. And then we armed them with the help of Miles with some tools on how to do a paid advertising campaign, even if it's small. Like, how do you do a Google campaign or a Facebook campaign or a social media campaign? So we really tried to do that crossover by empowering our smaller businesses. Very similar to what the secretary said is when you have these hotels that are not franchised or small businesses, they don't have an overarching umbrella that can help them. So we tried to step up and do that as a destination.
Excellent. Some great examples there. All right. So next, we're going to talk about the aspect of stewardship. And stewardship is really understanding how the destination is being represented and what are the points at which we can influence the way that the destination is perceived. I've worked with destinations almost my entire career. And while I have not been through a pandemic before, I'm not that old. I have helped destinations through every other kind of disaster I can think of: fires, floods, oil spills, hurricanes, all of those. And one of the common themes there in that recovery is always about the frequency and the consistency of communication. The people need to know, people want to know what is going on. They want to be communicated to, usually at a much higher pace than they normally would want information from a destination, because they need to understand what is going to happen if they go there, what is expected of them. Part of that communication are things that you control, right? Part of that communication are your owned channels, your website, your social, paid media, and that's part of how you deliver those messages. But you probably also know that there's a whole lot of the decision-making process. Kim has that great chart that happens outside your own channels. And that's really where stewardship comes into this, is thinking about all of those other places and how are we influencing and communicating in all of those other places. So we spend a lot of time talking about Google's products, and that's because they are unarguably, and like it or not, are the largest share of how people find out information about travel and how they find out information about businesses. This one is this is from Focusrite research that was actually in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and some European segments. And across all of that, 90% of the travelers used Google at some point in the trip planning process. And that's hardly a surprise. Okay. I mean, whether we're talking about search or maps or both, this is really where a lot of that stuff is happening. So we do spend a lot of time talking about that, but there are also, having done this for 3 years now, there are also a whole bunch of other platforms, right? So Wikipedia content pops up all over the place. You see that show up in Google, you see that show up elsewhere. Apple has been really aggressive in 2020. They put almost $2 billion into Apple Maps last year, and they've gotten really aggressive about the kind of content that is in there. Airbnb is adding destination content. Even Amazon has designs on helping people decide where to go. And so we have all of these different places that we have to pay attention to, and we have to think about how the destination is being represented in all of those places. In the process of this, we've worked with hundreds of markets to look at how that representation is done. Narissa, tell us a little bit about what is the most surprising thing that you found when you started looking at how the destination appeared in the platforms, and what were the steps that you took to steward how that market was being represented?
I think Kim has a great picture for us that showcases how we became the poster child of not controlling your brand and not knowing what's out there. So I present pig on a bike or pig as a bike. I am not sure exactly what this was, but this was the picture that was on Dupuis Management. And let me tell you, it is 21,000 acres of pristine, beautiful equestrian trails, hiking trails. It's a water management. It's managed by the South Florida Water Management District, but it's an absolutely beautiful look at old Florida. It's untouched. It's a nature preserve. So surprising was when we saw this picture pop up, for Dupuy, and it was just like, oh. So this was the most surprising thing. And then the most inspiring thing was how we could improve that. So now this is what you see after working with Google and, working with Miles and really working on what Google landscape looks like, is this is an actual picture of what it looks like. So we were able to, throughout this program, upload over 1,000 images that have had 11.6 million views. Now, I love our website. I think it's great, but we don't command what Google commands. So for us, it was really seeing what was out there on assets that we don't control necessarily, seeing what's out there and really stepping in to make sure it's an authentic and realistic look at what a visitor will get versus something that kind of was a little horrifying.
Definitely one of the most famous images from our program there. One of my favorites.
Yeah, we have a collection of the whole presentation of just all the crazy photos that we have found. But Pig on a Bike is a classic.
Someday we'll do that one. So as we've seen here, travelers have lots of different tipping points in their planning process. And sometimes, some cases it's cost, and sometimes it's experience, and sometimes it's availability. Coming out of the pandemic, I would argue that the destinations that will excel are the ones that can inspire that consumer confidence. And that is what is going to push the interest generated by marketing into action. So converting that sort of interest into actually taking action. Is it open? Is it safe? What is the experience like now? Secretary Schreier, what have you done in your market to inspire consumer confidence in the last year? And how do you see that evolving in the coming months?
Thank you. This is something that we've taken very serious in New Mexico. I spoke earlier about how different Florida and New Mexico have both tackled the pandemic, and we all know there's politics involved. However, in New Mexico specifically, our restrictions have been very tight, very tight. And so we're just now starting to see things open up here in New Mexico, but we're not in a place where we still have masks on. We still have tight cleaning and capacity restrictions within the state for businesses. And so early on, when we started seeing that consumer behavior come out of what consumers really wanted when they traveled, it was around safety. And so back in May of last year, we launched the New Mexico Safe Promise. We decided we were not going to use our tourism brand because our tourism brand is an invitation. And we also didn't want our brand to be weaved in with COVID conversations. So we decided we're going to protect New Mexico True, keep that aside, and we created a new brand with our destination partners. And it was industry-led because we wanted to take the politics out of it. And so the campaign launched in May, the New Mexico Safe Promise, and it was asking people to make the promise to wear the mask, to do the 6 feet of distancing and those other COVID safe practices. And it was a pretty strong success with the messaging. We got a lot of engagement. We got a lot of celebrities doing PSAs. And it got a lot of traction. We then launched a complimentary brand called New Mexico Safe Certified. And it was taking the public health order and all the requirements that the businesses had to implement to be able to operate within the public health order. And we did an online on-demand training for several different sectors. We did a pilot project with tourism, and then we expanded it to several different industries upon request. And again, that was industry-led. So we partnered with the New Mexico Association Society, or Executive Society, which they lead all the trade associations in New Mexico. And so that partnership was fantastic. It took the politics out, and it also provided that technical assistance to the businesses. And we've talked about mom and pops. They can't read, they're reading the law. It's very stressful. They don't know how to implement it. And so this was a great way not only to teach people how to implement and operationalize the requirements, but it also created a communication network from a neutral source that could provide updates as things continue to evolve. And it also allowed a feedback loop. So when one of the public health orders part of it didn't work for whatever reason, we're able to get that information from private sector and communicate that effectively to the governor's office and to the Department of Health. So we could work out those kinks in real time as best as possible. So that program was a huge success. We have had over 20,000 over 25,000 businesses have gone through it. 90% of hotels, 90% of restaurants. So we're really proud of that. And of course, what we also did is we created a marketing toolkit for each of the types of businesses. So they could integrate the New Mexico Safe Certified seal of approval on their website, and through, like for hotels, through their conversion platform. So you come to their website, you see the seal, you go through registration, you make the promise as a visitor at a hotel that they were going to comply with the law, essentially. And so they integrated it into all of their marketing platforms. And so we have this really amazing marketing machine that's out there, all communicating the same messaging, which has been really strong in regards to safety. The other thing that we have done is partner with our convention centers to grant them funds to get it's GBAC STAR facility accreditation, to make sure that all of them have gotten that accreditation. So when we do have meetings and conventions come back, there's a higher degree of confidence that it's safe here in New Mexico. And we knew there was going to be some financial restraints about them being able to achieve that. So we wanted to support them. Again, I really think New Mexico is in a place that builds consumer confidence. Despite regulations, not regulations, on the different states, New Mexico's vaccine rollout has been phenomenal. We have been top 3 since the beginning of the vaccine rollout. We were ranked #1 by the New York Times a couple weeks ago. And I think that really speaks to our Department of Health has done a great job, but they also increased their marketing and messaging. And so that way we have the marketing working with the operations, very similar to what we're talking about today, the destination management and marketing working together. And we know any business organization that puts those two together and is really aligned, they're going to optimize whatever they're trying to sell or do, whatever their goals are. So I think that kind of excellence that's come out of the vaccine rollout will also help us, because we're almost at herd immunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really good examples of consistency, and that consistency of messaging. So if you were watching the some of the research that we were doing over 2020, where we tracked weekly kind of sentiment, and we look at that over time, one of the key things that was really preventing people from making travel decisions was not understanding, was not being clear what was supposed to happen, or when was supposed to happen, or what they were expected to do. And so it was really interesting for me to see, kind of a little bit from the outside, looking at 50 different states and a zillion different destinations, and how each of them kind of engaged or didn't engage with that narrative. And I will say, I think New Mexico did an excellent job on that consistency.
Well,
okay, next question. And this one is really interesting to me, because I think there is a big shift that is happening here. I think this shift has been happening anyway, but I think that the pandemic really put a lot more pressure on this. So this is a question for both of you, and we'll start with Narissa. How is your perception of what a destination is responsible for changed over the course of 2020, or as part of this program? Do you see the destination's role differently now than you did at the start of that? And then how do you think that role will evolve moving forward regarding things like stewardship?
I think the destination, is only as good as its partners. They represent you. And when people come here, that's the experience that you're going to get. And in terms of our destination, what we saw, and I think it's the same thing in any state, is there was so much confusion about the emergency orders. They were coming out and they were coming out, and we were getting calls like, what does this mean? Can I do this? Can I not do this? There was so much confusion across all of the sectors, especially the industry, that people just didn't know. So we were almost like the translation, and we really worked and leaned on a lot of our partners, like the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, to be like, okay, what does this executive order actually mean for my mom and pop restaurants? What does this mean for a hotel? Because Florida was a little more open. Can they have a wedding? Can they not have a wedding? So I think the role of destinations has changed in that we're the conduit of information. Like, we can help get them that level of confidence that we've vetted the answer and we're getting them the appropriate information. It's also, regardless of your destination, working with the county, your local government, your state government, and making sure that you know what's going on as those, because sometimes the state order would come down, but then there'd be a local ordinance change. So working with all of those stakeholders to make sure you're all on the same page and you have the same information. So I think that's become a change. I mean, a lot of us were kind of doing it. We were handing out information, but it's almost like being the dictionary or the Google of what can I do when a partner has a question about something going through. And I think that's going to be ongoing. I don't see that changing. And I think that's a good thing, that we're definitely part of the conversation. And then from a revenue standpoint, everyone can really see when tourism shut down, the impact of everything. So the dialogues in there, the partnerships that have been formed with people that we didn't, or organizations that we worked with, but not as closely. I think we need to keep those relationships intact because they're hugely important as we advocate for the same things that we all need.
Yeah, those are, I mean, these are things that destinations didn't do 10 years ago, even a couple of years ago. So Secretary Schreier, you talked a lot about the kind of the decision that was made and the shift that was happening. Is it a permanent shift? Do you think that will endure here, or is this a temporary kind of a thing?
I think that's an excellent question. Because I come from an economic development background, all of that training and experience just clicked in as soon as the pandemic started. I mean, I worked on the 2008 recession, and the amount of partnerships that you need to establish early on to make sure that you can support your constituents was the most critical thing that we put together at the very beginning. We developed 9 different task forces that were specifically for tourism sectors. We partnered with the Small Business Development Corporation. They actually hired people that were tourism experts to do counseling with businesses. They've saved about 1,000 jobs because of that. They made sure that people were getting that investment as the federal dollars came in. I actually think that we shouldn't call them DMOs anymore. I mean, let's start with what we're calling them. We're telling our DMOs that you do marketing, but in the reality of it, for us to really move forward and look at each of these crises that this is going to continue. I mean, whether it's a wildfire, like we're dealing with one right now in southern New Mexico, and California has fires that happen every single year, or it's a hurricane. I mean, we know that there's going to be another crisis. And so if we look at our destination marketing organizations of being more than just marketing, I think that's going to help the resiliency and the recovery of this industry long term. And if we look at it from an economic development standpoint and who are all the players in that sphere that can support our efforts, I work with the Council of Governments, the COGS. I work with Workforce Solutions, which is all of the, not only unemployment, but they do training. They get federal dollars. So even before the pandemic, we had a program for hospitality that we were developing for skilling up New Mexicans in hospitality. So, and then there's the infrastructure. We're looking at how do we make sure that we have enough internet connection at our ski resorts. So I think there's an opportunity here if we look at it from economic development, infrastructure, and workforce development of what do we need as a destination to be able to be resilient and recover. And we do that through our partners. We don't have to be, we don't have to have all the skills in all of those areas, but if we have partnerships and we collaborate across state agencies and local as well, I think that's how we get out of this.
Yeah, and that's a great point as we move into looking at readiness, which is really that looking at preparing the communities and businesses to have, I think we said this in the New Mexico program, was that we wanted everyone to have their best foot forward digitally as travel returns. I actually have a sneak preview for everybody on the call today. We added some new questions into our State of the American Traveler, Generations Edition, which is going to be coming out in May. So keep your eyes open for an invitation from Miles and Destination Analysts for our webinar on the next State of the American Traveler. But this round, we asked US travelers some questions about how frequently they're using certain tools such as Google Maps and Yelp and TripAdvisor, and also sort of their perceived level of trustworthiness of those channels. And that goes hand in hand with a lot of the industry education efforts that we've been working with. So this is asking folks to evaluate, where is the information trustworthy? And Google was leading the pack in this, as 70.8% said that the information in Google Maps, business listings, and search were always or usually trustworthy. And then followed by a bit of a tie between TripAdvisor and Facebook, in fact, which I found surprising in that. And then we also asked them, if you had to choose one, where do you think, which one of these channels do you think is the most trustworthy for where you would go for information? And 61.4% said that Google would be their go-to place. So not surprisingly, a lot of our business upskilling has focused on the Google platform, training folks on how to use Google My Business, making sure they've taken that obvious first step of just claiming their listings so that they can keep their hours up to date and update whether masks are required and what their cleaning policies are. Those have proven to be very simple, seemingly simple steps that make a big difference for businesses. A lot of what we see in customer confidence comes down to what's being found on those platforms at the business listing level. And because of that, our business owners play a really big role in what the destination looks like online, but it's also really tough to get them engaged. They are knee deep in trying to keep the doors open, trying to keep things going. Narissa, you mentioned the education program we started earlier. We always try to tell the businesses, please just spend 15 minutes a week, in these platforms, trying to keeping these things up to date. What were some of the things you did to help kind of pull them out of the weeds for a few minutes and really get them to prioritize this digital upskilling? And then how's that ultimately helped those businesses out?
So we did a series of 4 workshops and we staggered them, and they had homework assignments and stuff that only benefited them. Like about it. Sometimes they did the homework, sometimes they didn't. Kim helped us with them, pushing that along. But I mean, online brand reputation, people sometimes just don't think about that. We have partners here that have really old websites, and that's okay, because if you have a good Google presence and you're engaging with them that way, as we just saw, that they can still be top of mind. And we added an incentive to that. So there was an incentive if you went through and did all 4 courses, which benefit you, everything from, online brand reputation to just what is the Google landscape, responding, adding your hours. You get extra credit if you're, a minority owned company or a female owned company. I mean, and making sure they're ticking those boxes and accurately representing themselves, and then teaching them how to do a campaign. So I think that ultimately really helped. And we had several partners who didn't even know, like, oh, I had no idea that was out there, or I hadn't even thought about being able to contribute to Google or to what people are saying out there. So I think we got, hopefully, businesses to be part of that conversation. And now we've put those webinars online as part of our industry resource offering. And then we did a do this, not that during a pandemic with a researcher named Brian London. And that was really good because we pulled real life experiences out of, have you thought about these things, or these are best practices that you can easily implement. So I think it has made a difference, and the information is just out there. And we had people that were not tourism related that took that because it really helped them. We had some like a hair salon that said she's now #1 because she followed along on the course in terms of local Stewart hair salons. So I mean that's a good thing.
It's awesome. I'm glad to hear she bounced up to #1. That's great. Secretary Schreier, so do you think, how does industry education and upskilling play into the future of where you guys are headed with supporting the industry in that sort of crossover between management you were talking about earlier? It sounds like you guys have quite a few programs in place. Encouraging participation, I think, is really the biggest challenge in all of those, sort of bringing them to just stop for a moment and really focus on those elements.
Yeah, I really appreciate what Nerys is talking about. These small mom and pops, they don't have a lot of time. They have, I mean, especially during a stressful time like this, the last thing they want to think about is what their business looks like on Google. But I think the proof is in the pudding, and when they see the results, they're really excited about it. But something I just find really funny is, we're marketers, right? That's kind of our primary mission. And, we spend millions and millions of dollars advertising so people can see frequency of message, right? So they'll come to our destination. But sometimes with our outreach, we do like one email and we're like, why didn't anyone respond? Why didn't all these stakeholders take the class? Why did they show up? And so I always tell my team, like, we got to be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to partnering. And so what we did during the pandemic, all of our visitor centers were closed, and we decided not to lay off any employees. So we took our visitor center employees, who are destination experts, right? They know their destination. They've been sending clients or people, consumers, to these businesses for years. And we said, now you're calling the business owner, and we're going to develop a relationship. And so our VIC employees were trained to call and teach them how to claim their business and check all those boxes that Nerys was referring to. And fortunately, we had the capacity to do that. And New Mexico is very rural, very, very rural, and a lot of mom and pops. And so that personal touch actually ticked up our participation quite a bit. And so they worked on that, I believe, for like 4 or 5 months, calling different business owners. But also it was great training for them as visitor center employees, because they got a better understanding of the product. The other thing that we have seen in New Mexico, because we've had tighter restrictions for the last year, we've seen workforce migration. So a lot of our workforce has left the state to go to states that had more open and more job opportunity. And so that is something that we're having to deal with. So we partnered with the Department of Workforce Solutions to do a tourism and hospitality workforce assessment. We are looking at, when are you looking to hire? How many people are you looking to hire? What is the skill gap that you're seeing? Have you been asking for more employees to come back? Why aren't they coming back? And so that intel has been very helpful. And we're going to be using that information to partner with Workforce Solutions, but also we're going to be developing our own tourism and hospitality workforce program for training and upskilling. We've had conversations with higher ed and our community colleges, and then we're also talking with another university that has a lot of on-demand training already in the can, ready to go. So that way we can upskill in those key areas that are being identified by our industry, by private sector. And then also we're hoping we can have some carrots to bring back our workforce that have left the state. We have a pretty heavy lift here. We know that a lot of our hotels are operating at a lower capacity because they don't have the workforce. They have the demand, but they don't have the workforce to be able to take care of the property and do a great job. So that's one of the challenges that we're seeing here in New Mexico. And hopefully, as we reach that herd immunity, our state will open up completely and we can invite visitors back. So I'm very hopeful, but I know we have a lot of work to do before we get there.
It's actually one of my concerns, particularly here looking at what's going on in New Zealand. There was a skill shortage here already in tourism and in places like hospitality. And then over the course of 2020, there's a real erosion of, operators closing down and that workforce kind of going, not leaving the country, but getting into other industries. And so when demand comes back, there's, that's one of my fears here, is that when demand comes back, there's going to be this avalanche of demand. And we were already in a position where we couldn't really deliver on that pre-pandemic, let alone post-pandemic, when you've had this erosion of workforce. So I think that's going to be a really common kind of challenge, as even into 22 and beyond, is that rebuilding of the workforce and being able to deliver on all of those experiences.
And,
All right,
I think it'll
Sorry, go ahead.
happen. Yeah, I think it'll happen. I mean, if you look at after the tech bubble, a lot of people got out of tech, initially, and then they went back. And then after 2008, a lot of people got out of the banking system, and then they went back. So, I mean, you're going to see, because people are scared. They want that stable job. Well, I think the good news about tourism specifically is that a pandemic is only going to, knocking on wood, it happens. It's not going to happen every year like a fire might, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that we will see the workforce come back, but I would really recommend destinations taking that issue very seriously and putting together an intentional, disciplined approach to building your workforce again, because that will be the biggest barrier. You could influence demand, right, with our marketing, and that's easier, but building a workforce can be a lot of work.
Yeah. It's a much longer road. All right, moving on real quick to the third aspect here, which we call vibrancy. And vibrancy is a lot about how the image of the destination. So this is a lot about photography and video. And in the destination industry, we all know that that's really kind of the heart of travel inspiration, is how, how it's presented, what the hero photos that we have. And, going back to that kind of crisis communication, this is one of those things that's really, really important to destinations, especially after a crisis. People want to know what it looks like right now. They want to be confident that their experience is going to match what their expectations are, and it's beyond that, right? Like the kinds of images that we use, where we have hero images we've been using for years and years, don't fulfill that. Right, we're suddenly in a position where we have to be able to put, images that are live right now. Right, what does it look like right now? What does it look like yesterday? Suddenly, the recency of it is a lot more important than the quality of that image, or the kind of the historical representation of those images. Shifting into kind of what are those images of? This is from the travel sentiment research that we were doing, and this was asking questions about the activities that travelers were interested in. And so if we look at this list, a lot of the stuff at the top of that list has to do with outdoors, and that's obviously been a really important aspect of 2020, is people focused on outdoors, where they can kind of be away from people and they don't have to have the same kind of concerns. And that really played into the way that the destinations were representing themselves visually. So Secretary Schreier, tell us a little bit about how New Mexico has thought about and tackled that idea of vibrancy and the outdoor economy.
So one of the things I mentioned earlier, as we were looking at our digital footprint, it was clear that our outdoor recreation, our outdoor products and experiences did not have very strong representation online. So we did partner with Miles Partnership to up our game online for all of those types of activities. I think the other thing that we have done is a lot of our marketing creative assets. We've always showcased our outdoor rec, but I think we've upped our game there as well for us for future. One of the things that particular slide makes me think of is, the importance of dining at restaurants. I don't think, a year ago, 2 years ago, that would have been number one. But because of the restrictions, and we know that indoor dining, especially in winter here in New Mexico, that was a huge deterrent for people to come, right? Because our dining was closed on the inside. So tourists were like, I'm going to take this back to my hotel room and eat there. No, thank you. But in regards to the outdoor economy, we do have an Office of Outdoor Economy or Outdoor Recreation within the Economic Development Department, and we've collaborated not only with them but our state parks and a lot of the other Game and Fish and a lot of other assets and agencies to see how we can really showcase those better. And that partnership has gone pretty well over the course of 2 years. But And I love this video that you're showing of Pecos, and we have it all branded. And we recently did a brand refresh. We announced that 2 weeks ago with, this is our new bug, you can see, with the Zia. And so that was the other thing that we took a lot of time this year. You know, when you have time to do creative, the New Mexico True brand had been around for nearly a decade, and we decided it was time for a little facelift and modernize the font type. And so that was a fun announcement that we did a couple weeks ago. Isn't that gorgeous?
Some
Yeah, there were so
excellent
many
examples there.
beautiful shots to choose from of the 360s.
Oh, that's
that
absolutely
we've been
gorgeous.
publishing this year.
So talking about 360s and tours, in 2020, we saw a really sharp increase in the interest around virtual experiences. In many cases, the destinations that already had those assets were the ones that really benefited most. You know, Puerto Rico, as an example, we'd shot some 360 there, and they put together this really interesting kind of curated tour. But that was all stuff that existed, right? Like, it was really hard in April of 2020 to say, oh man, I got to go out and take this stuff. Is the importance of this type of virtual content here to stay? And what kinds of content should destinations be collecting in 2021 to be ready for whatever's next? And I'll ask Narissa to take this one.
I think, you know, what we've learned throughout this is people really want to know what makes your area special. Like, well, how do you stand out? And I think having visual representation of those areas and making sure that you see what's out there, like we did with Dupuy. I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful nature area. Here in Martin County, we have over 100,000 acres of parks and conservation land. You know, are we showcasing that? So I think the virtual component is still here. I think people are curious to see what's there before they make their travel decision. We've leaned on this before. We haven't gone through a pandemic, thank goodness, but we've had environmental issues here in Martin County before, where we've had to go to a here and now campaign, where we're time-stamping stuff and saying, these are actual conditions here. You've seen Visit Florida do it after any hurricane. People want to see what's in the area, what it looks like now. And I think they're shopping around and they want to see that. Can I see myself there? Is that an experience I want to have? I don't think the virtual component's going away. And I think as destinations, we need to make sure that we are really putting our best foot forward and showcasing those things that make us, you know, so special and make people want to go there and experience that and do that.
I think those are some great examples of that crossover between destination management and destination marketing. This is kind of closing in on the end of the hour here, so we just have a couple of things left. Shifting into collaboration a little bit more. One of the ways that destination marketing and management seem to be coming together is through unique partnerships, both within and outside the tourism industry. So let's ask this question: what kind of collaborations have been happening in your markets to aid recovery? And we'll start with Narissa.
So for us, we collaborate a lot with Visit Florida. They're the state agency and we're one of the small partners. So we're always looking to them to see what opportunities are there and what fits. Not everything is a fit. You know, some of the partnerships and opportunities that they have don't represent us or they're not a good fit for us. So we look at that, how we can work with our state. And then on a local level, Martin County is part of an area known as the Treasure Coast, which is 3 counties. So we have a partnership where we work with St. Lucie County and Indian River County, and we talk about what makes the area the Treasure Coast and the treasure that was sunk and still found in the area. So I think you need to look for those partnerships, and especially when it comes to economy of scales and going after markets that you can't do on your own, it makes sense to work together for certain things. And then even going beyond that, we're working with Visit Florida on adventure. How do they do adventure travel? What does that look like? And they're pulling in partners from rural, really rural areas. We're rural, but really, really rural areas like Okeechobee County and Sebring and other areas to make sure that our outfitters know what's available and that we're really making sure that we showcase the adventure opportunities that we have here. So I think looking for your state, and as an example, what's the state working on, you know, partnering, like if you're in New Mexico, what direction is the state taking and where does it fit for you to dovetail in with that? And then looking around you, because we all have, you know, partners that we can use and really pull those together and showcase the area.
So this is an interesting, because we had 2 sides of that collaboration here. So same question for Secretary Schreier. What kind of collaborations are happening kind of from the other direction, from the state?
Sure. Sure. Well, I think we spoke about a lot of them that we did this last year. Some of the things that we're going to be doing moving forward is we have different platforms for collaboration that we establish that have like specific goals and objectives of what we want to accomplish. We have regional boards that represent different regions within New Mexico, and those meet on a regular basis to achieve, we usually do 4 projects a year. And that's been a really great way to work within our very rural communities and making sure that we are including them and their experiences in a lot of our marketing. We also, we do a lot of storytelling. And you can't tell a story unless you know the community, and you have to really seek out and curate those stories. And so we have a program called Keep New Mexico True, which is all about environmental stewardship, making sure that we keep our lands beautiful. And so we are actually curating stories about the people that have the passion to keep our outdoors beautiful. And so that's an ongoing thing that we have to partner with different locals. We also have our cooperative marketing program that we have where we do 2-to-1 or 1-to-1 matches with local DMOs and nonprofits. And it's really unique because the way we do it is that we create basically it's a huge media menu, and as you enter your information in of your target markets and what you're trying to achieve, a media menu will actually be created specifically to reach your objectives as a DMO. So we have a lot of different programs, and I think from a collaboration standpoint at the state, I think it gets tricky because people see that you do marketing well and everyone wants you to do their marketing for them. And it always doesn't make sense for destination marketing. However, it does make sense to work with our cultural affairs agency. It makes sense to work with Main Street on when they do events to attract tourists. It makes sense for us to partner with state parks when it comes to attracting tourists. And so we've put some good guidelines of what it means to partner with our agency. Otherwise, we'd be asked to do everything. And I think a good example of that is our agency was asked to take over the Department of Health's marketing during the pandemic because they needed, they needed marketing expertise that they didn't have. And so,
they do.
And now,
absolutely,
and now they do. So we were able to put together a special team to support that effort. But I think people look at us, we produce gorgeous content. We are able to move the needle with consumers. And so I think it's important, though, to make sure you have your guardrails on so that way you don't get pulled into a lot of PSA work.
Excellent. All right, we actually have a couple questions coming in, and just a few minutes here to wrap them up. So I will let's take a couple of live questions. There's also some stuff in the Q&A. I think there's a specific question for you in there, Narissa, that you could type the answer to if you want, or we'll try to answer these later. So the question that I will ask here, which I think is a great one, it says many rural destinations are being overrun as people continue to look to the outdoors, as our slide showed in there. How does your marketing, how do the marketing messages incorporate sustainability? Sustainability promises like safety promises are nice, but they're not necessarily effective in curbing the amount of litter or the amount of damage that visitors do along trails and beaches. So I think sustainability is a really important aspect of this. Do either of you, Narissa, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So we're lucky because we're part of county government. So we work with the, I always give him a different title, but he's the ecosystem restoration manager. So we work really closely with them to see, okay, what's going on with the parks? Where do they want us to send people? We're low key, we're a small destination. So we have limited inventory. So that can be a good thing is, you don't have a lot of hotels here. So we are pretty much scaled to even in season of what you can get. But working with the county parks department or your local government to see what's going on and ways that you can help. And we're working on actually trying to form a co-position. So it's an eco restoration and ecotourism position. So fingers crossed on that one, where somebody would actually be out inventorying the land, helping with exotic removals, and then conducting tours on the area as well, so that you can help guide people where you want them to go versus not go. And I think, again, making sure that information is up to date on your digital landscape with hours, operations, and just messaging in there.
Okay, and in 1 minute or less, Secretary Schreier, any thoughts on sustainability?
Sure, I'm going to put a website in the chat. The Keep America Beautiful is a federal program, and there are federal funds, and there's also local affiliates. So I would look for your local affiliate to partner with. We run it for the state, the grant program, and so the Keep New Mexico True campaign that I mentioned before, that is specifically on sustainability. Did I say it under 60 seconds?
Excellent. Yes, you did.
Okay, good.
All right, that puts us at 5:59, and just coming back to our theme here of recovery requires more than marketing. We've talked about a variety of different things that destinations are doing and can do to be stewards of the destination, to build that digital readiness, and to amplify the vibrancy of those markets. We do have a couple more questions in here. We will work on answering those separately as part of the process here. We really appreciate everyone's time, taking the time to meet with us. Thank you, Narissa. Thank you, Secretary Schreier. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
And I think that about wraps us up. So kia ora koutou katoa, which is be well, and thanks to all of you.
Thank you.